Hey guys, I hope everyone is doing well today. It's Jake here. So in this video, my goal is to give you guys as much helpful information and insight into what I think you should be sending into PSA right now. And I'm going to do that by showing you the specific cards that I'm about to send in my next submission. And it's going to be a rather big submission. I still have more cards that I'm going through, and I'm probably going to end up sending in another 100 or so cards from just the ones I'm going to show you today. This might be a little bit of a long video. We'll see how it goes, but I'm going to try and go through quite a few of the cards. But the main useful pieces of information are going to be for you guys is going to be what cards I'm specifically sending, and I'm going to go into why I'm sending these cards, what my thought process is, to be completely transparent. And then I'm going to show you guys the cards, and we're going to talk a little bit about grading standards and what PSA looks for. And so we're going to try and accomplish both those things, helpful things, in one video. All right, because I get a lot of questions on what should I grade, what do you think this will grade, these sorts of questions. So I'm going to try and hopefully this video will answer a lot of that for you guys and provide you that good information. Okay, and we'll also get to look at some great cards. So let's start. So I'm just going to start from the top of my thing here. So we're going to start with some first edition base set cards. Here's a first edition Chansey. So when you look at this card, centering is pretty good. We're going to talk about centering first. You can see that it's a little bit thicker on this side than that side. With the grading standards right now, that is sort of on the border, I would say, between 9 and 10, but I would certainly lean 9. I think that most likely you get a 9 because of that centering issue. There is also some light scratching on this card. If we turn around the back, we can see that there is some decent whitening on the top. This is certainly not a mint card or a pack pulled card. This is a card that I've had for a long time. I have a number of these first edition cards just sitting in binders, and as the prices go up, I decide to send them in, which I guess is the first tip, is that there is no rush at all to send in. I think people feel, unless you want to sell it right away, which is part of why I am grading quite a few of these. I am probably going to look to sell some, potentially, depending on where the market is and whenever I get these back. But yeah, so the tip there is that there is no rush. These cards do not get in worse condition over time. I've had this for a long time. It's in the exact same condition now as it was when I first got it because I protect my cards. And now that the prices are up, it just makes sense for me to send it in. So a lot of the cards I'm sending in today are going to be in that sort of category. A lot of, most of my Gem Mint 10 first edition holos I've already sent in. All right. So if we're going to be grading this card with that whitening on the top, pretty nice there. Good centering on the back, some light scratches. I think we're talking about, I'm probably hoping for like a solid 7. I think would be probably pretty reasonable on this. I have seen cards like this pull 8s, and I just think that that's like, this would be a very, very weak 8. It could get a 6 too. So I would hope for a 7, would not be shocked at all with a 6 on this, just to give you guys a basic sense of grading. But it's pretty small, the whitening at the top, and the rest of the card is pretty nice. So it could pull an 8. The problem is that light scratching that sort of adds to it. I would say without the light scratching, I'd be more hoping for the 8. Okay. So our next card here is a first edition Squirtle. These cards have gotten really hot, so I am sending in a few more. I sent in about 5 in my last submission. I'm going to send in another few, I think, another 2 or so in this one. And that submission I still haven't gotten back. They haven't been graded. So the ones that I sent in, I think, are probably 10s in my last submission. They were really beautiful. These cards are also very, very minty. Very, very, little edge wear, if any, honestly. There's really none on this card. Slight centering issue from left to right, very similar to the Chansey. I bought a lot of these cards from one person, a lot of these mint cards from one person about a year and a half ago in a big purchase. And so I imagine a lot of them were pulled from the same box, and some of them have the same type of centering. So yeah, so this is, to me, you know, it's a little bit moved over. There's a little bit of centering issue for sure on the front. I would be really surprised if this got a 10, but I would also be very surprised if it didn't at least get a 9, because the centering is not far off enough that it deserves an 8, in my opinion. So with today's prices, you know, obviously a very expensive card. So another Squirtle, similar issue here. A little off-centered this time from right to left. You can see it's a little bit thinner on this side, a little bit thicker on this side. Again, though, great looking card. Completely mint. One like littlest tiny tick up there. Looks like there's an even smaller tick. I mean, that probably wouldn't be counted against it. You know, the smallest ticks, but like, again, usually those are passable. That type of like little tiny whitening, if everything is perfect, can be passable. This is probably the most pronounced one. Could put it to a 9. So this in my opinion would be a 10 if it wasn't for that centering. But you know, probably 9. You can get lucky. In my last submission, I sent in, before even two submissions ago, the one that I got back, I sent in about 100 or so of these cards, and lots of them came back 9s and 10s from the same thing that I got from this guy. And these were a little bit better, the ones that I sent in, than these, but these are still pretty great and still have a great chance. So here's first edition Pikachu. Centering looks pretty good on this one, a little bit fatter on the bottom, but you know, 9 quality probably. Again, you know, minty backs, you know, tiny tick here. Again, probable 9 with a small chance, you know. Centering is, I think, very nice on this one. You know, a tiny bit thicker on the bottom, but even a little bit better than the Pikachu. Really good looking card. The other two ones that I sent in last time of these Ivysaurs both got 10s, and this one is pretty much just as nice. It has this little tick here, like little tiny bits of whitening that I think that the other one didn't have. Otherwise, it's the exact same card. So probable 9 maybe squeezes out that 10 because of there's such a little bit of whitening there. So this card I'm debating on whether or not to send in. As you can see, there's a smudge here, and I had a fear that when I saw this that maybe this card was fake and they put a fake thing here, but all the other cards have been very real. So it's a perfect card other than that error, that smudge error, and I'm not sure what they would do about it. And so I'm almost interested to send it in and see what they would do. If anyone else has sent in a card like this, please let me know. I also have some cards I sent in that have, they one rare thing, and I should have brought it over because I could have showed you guys, we could have talked about it, but there's some interesting errors on first edition base cards. One is that on some cards they have a first edition stamp on the back that randomly gets placed in random parts on the back. It's really faint and hard to see. I sent in one that had that first edition stamp on the back, and it got a 10. And I was wondering if they would grade down on that, but they didn't. So I'm kind of interested in to send that Starmie, because that Starmie to me is a 10 if it wasn't for that smudge. So now we're getting into some cards. I just didn't send them because they were like just lesser cards. You know, slightly fatter on this side, but it's a 9. I'm gonna go a little quicker on some of these. Apologize if you can hear my dog barking in the back. Hopefully it's not too bad. On this card, we've got fatter on the bottom, you know, slight centering issues, but again, minty back. So a lot of these are kind of the same thing. When I went through these, I sent in all of the ones that I thought were surefire 10s, but these are all 9s and up in my opinion. Some of them had like a little bit more issues, but this one might have been a possible 10. So I'll skip a chunk of them, but there are going to be more of those cards, but just for the sake of the video. So the reason I'm sending in first edition base set cards is even though I think that the pops are going to continue to rise on those, and I've been telling you stuff that other channels just will not tell you, which is that there's a lot more of even these first edition base set commons and uncommon cards out there, and there are still a lot in mint condition. Now, what does a lot mean? In the world, maybe these populations will double, you know, in the next 20 years, that type of thing. But which is not a lot. That's still, you know, 1,000 PSA 10s or something for a lot of these cards, or quite a bit less depending on the card. And so, but I think that you just be prepared for that and understand that, and that Pokemon, in order for these cards to really go up in value in the future, the Pokemon, there needs to be more demand and more popularity in the future to continue to push them up. And if the demand stays about even or goes down slightly, and we're in sort of a mania, there's a chance that we'll see a retrace over the next 5 to 10 years, which is what I would expect, honestly. I would expect after this sort of intense period. I don't know how long this could last. It could last years, right? Where more and more people come into the hobby and the demand goes up and prices continue to go up. It easily could. But whenever that demand sort of cools off or calms down, because the awareness phase is over, in the sense that really everyone knows now that Pokemon cards are fashionable again and are expensive, and the people who want to be in the hobby are sort of in it from our generation type of thing. What I think will happen is more and more of these types of cards will slowly be graded, but the demand will stay even, and thus they should retrace a little bit over time. But I think eventually in the long run, hopefully if Pokemon stays really stable, these cards the pops will eventually stop going up for these, and that's when you're going to see sort of steady growth over time. That's my hope, but certainly is speculation. So why I'm grading these is I am going to be holding these. I hold anything 9 and 10 first edition base. I hold. I don't sell. I did sell a little bit into the mania. I guess I'm contradicting myself right there. Generally, I don't sell. I sold a little bit into the Logan Paul mania because the prices just were too high, but they've been retracing a little bit on some of these too, and at this point, I feel like they're more reasonable, and so I'm at this point I'm holding, even though I think they might come down a little bit. I think in the long run, they're probably pretty good and pretty safe. I also just absolutely love these cards. So it's a pleasure having many duplicates. I love putting up like 10 of the same card in a case. It's just wonderful. It makes me very happy. Okay, so now we're going to go into some modern. So I'm going to be sending in some Evolutions Charizards. So I've told you guys I have a bunch of these, and I am going to send in a few of them. The ones I'm going to send in, this one is I believe was a possible 10. Trying to think if there was anything wrong with it. Like maybe slight tilted centering issue, but absolutely no print lines, scratches. When I looked at this card close, it's a little hard to see through these cases, but that's the other thing you really have to look for, particularly on those hollows, and you have to look for surface on all of these cards. But all of these cards have very minty clean surfaces. They were all pack fresh cards. This card could get a 10. Really excellent looking card, but again, as we've oh wait, maybe this one isn't the 10 one. You can see there's a tiny nick there. You can see that. I think that will, because they seem to be grading this card like really hard, and they seem to be intentionally keeping the pop low, because there have been like plenty of great cards that probably should have gotten 10s that just weren't of this, whereas like other sets they will sneak through with 10s. I'm expecting to get no 10s, but I think that this is probably going to be a 9, particularly because of that. Another likely 9. When I looked at these, I found reasons to expect 9s and not 10s. It's pretty rare that I'll expect a 10. Little tiny speck down there, probable 9. Probable 9. I won't go into too many of them. Okay, and then I'm sending in 4 Japanese ones. And these all look like 10s to me. I could not see anything wrong with any of them. I'm expecting 4 10s. I already have a few PSA 10s of this. You know, CP6, there's definitely less of this out there. It was much less printed than the English side. I like the Japanese look better than the English one. And so I really like these cards, but, you know, they're easy to grade, and there are still going to be quite a few of them. You know, as I told you guys, I would not be touching Evolutions or buying Evolutions. And I have another, I think, 20 of these. I think I probably have like 10 English. I have like 10 or so English reverse, 10 regular-ish, and then a few more Japanese, and they're all like 8s to 9s, not definite 9s to 10s. And I'm not sending in 8s to 9s at this point. I'm just going to hold them to make sure that the price holds on these over time, because I have my big doubts on them as like waves of these get graded. And I think I hear other channels and other people saying grade like 8s, grade 7s. I've heard someone say grade like anything, even if it's like really dinged up, 5 and 6. And I highly disagree with that logic. Not because they're definitely going to be wrong in the long run. It's possible that they'll be right. I really don't think so, because I think there's way too much of this product. But because there's just no rush, unless you're flipping into this market. If you want to flip into this market, then I think grading it as quickly as possible and selling it right now when it's still hot is a good move. That's what I would be doing. I'm thinking about maybe sending this in. I just think it's cool. One of the pulls that Rafi and I got, and it's a definite 10. I normally don't send in cards like this, but kind of like it, and I think it's a 10. I bought a complete mint expedition set that has all of the rares mint. Oh, and I might grade this Pikachu too. So all of these are 10s. I've been grading. I think I graded the Charizard the last time. The one I'm most interested in is this Mew. Pack fresh from this guy that I bought it from. Probably we'll grade these 3, I guess. I don't know why I picked the Pichu. I have to go back to my notes. But yeah, probable 10s. So my feeling on those cards is normally before I never would have graded them, but they do have a decent amount of value. I like them. I think they're cool. And I am looking to get sort of a PSA 10 complete set of Expedition in Japanese and English of all of the cards eventually. And so I'll be using that as for my collection goal. And then I also think that certainly in today's market, like if this gets a 10, I could probably sell it for like $150 or $100. And I could be off on that. Maybe it's worth even more. It's just silly. Like, I could have bought this in holo for $80, $90 in Japanese not too long ago. The prices have just been skyrocketing on these. Now, the art on this, unbelievable. And obviously in holo, it's amazing. But, you know, the non-holo too. Just one of the most underrated cards. I've been saying for a long time, this is one of the most underrated cards in the entire hobby in terms of art. It's also the first Mew set card that had that Mew holo. And Mew, when we were kids, Mew was kind of the chase card, the holy grail. It's part of why that ancient Mew was thought to be worth so much money when we were kids. So then I've got just a couple of these I pulled from. I have binder sets that I've been pulling from on occasion and then replacing with sort of lower quality cards now that these cards have gotten so expensive. So I believe these are definite 9s, maybe 10s. There appears to be just like the smallest possible nick on that bottom corner, but it might be small enough that they don't take off for that. I certainly see 10s like all the time that have these types of nicks. Usually when I have that type of really small nick and everything else is perfect, I do end up getting a 9, but sometimes I pull a 10. So, you know, at least a 9, maybe a 10. At this point, they are worth grading for the time being. You know, I think at least they're rare, so even though a lot more of these cards will be graded, not nearly as many of these rare cards from these sets will be graded as the common and uncommons. So same thing for this card. I believe it was just in really good condition. I'm also, looks like there's some whitening. It's the same, maybe small dot down in this corner, bottom right corner. But I have all of these two. I also don't have in 10 yet, and I have the other non-holos in 10. So it's another reason why I'm gonna give it a shot. Now that I'm remembering, then I have just a few holo cards. This holo muck Definitely the least expensive and easiest to grade from the fossil set. Still a really cool card. I think there was like maybe a little tiny nick. I mean, just the smallest edge wear there. You know, this could certainly get a 10. A lot of these get 10s. So again, just binder cards, and I sent in about 15 to 20 in my last PSA order about 5-6 months ago. Also, just sitting in binders, and there are a lot. As I continue to say to people, there are a lot more of these mint cards out there. This card also is very clean. I believe this one was a little weaker though. I think there was some edge wear or something. Yeah, so there's some edge wear there. So this one, I would be very happy to get a 9 off that type of edge wear. I think it's more likely that'll bring it down to an 8. There's also a little tick there. But I've seen cards like that get 9s, but I would expect an 8 just because it's a little bit too significant, I think. And these cards also, I inspected the hollows, which you always have to do, and there actually were not print lines. They were very clean, very, very clean hollows from my recollection and my notes. So as you can see on this one, it has a little bit of that front edge wear. Often PSA does not take off for that, and these cards like often have that, and I've seen plenty of PSA 10s that have that, and I've sent in cards that have gotten PSA 10 that have that. So I normally ignore it a little bit, but I do think it has the chance of kind of making it an automatic 9. Centering on this one's a little bit off, a little bit bigger here on the right. Top to bottom looks good. This one I think had more whitening. This was the worst of the 3, but yeah. So this one has quite a few chips, as you can see. This is more in the 8 to maybe 7 category. Definite not 9 in my view when it has that many chips. I think if it didn't have these middle chips and maybe that one chip there, just the corner chips would probably get the 9 with the off centering. But this I would expect an 8, and it is possible to get a 7 too for sure, and that would be pretty disappointing. All right, and then I just got random modern card here again, one that Rafi and I pulled. I'm not sure I'll send that in or not. I'm considering sending in this Dark Charizard First Edition Holo. It's a very clean front, pretty major. This one has so far the worst centering issues. This centering's bad enough probably to bring it down to an 8 already. Maybe. I've been noticing they've been grading a little bit harder overall, I think, on centering. It's just been my experience recently, and from just things I've been watching. But this, in the past, I think definitely would have gotten a 9 with this type of centering. But I would still hope for that 9, but there is damage on this one. Not damage, but there's ticks at the top, and then there's a pretty big one down there. So this card, I would say, is a 7. So maybe I'll send it in, maybe I won't. Obviously that the value's there right now, but like I don't really like sending in 7s. I prefer them in binders. I really like binder cards, and these types of 7s to me just make so much sense in binders because it's just such a flawless front other than the centering. Also, as I've talked about on this channel, there are just so many Dark Charizard First Edition Holos in the world. Definitely although it's such an iconic card, it's an overrated card. There's going to be tons more of these graded, as we've seen. I saw those $10,000 prices on this card. I think it's already like halved in price now in the last week or so from that. If those PWCC ones actually sold, and like $12,000 for this card is just insane in a PSA 10 to me at this point in Pokemon history. So I think it's already coming down quite a bit. So I'm going to have to see where that lands as well. Here we've got a Shadowless Venusaur. I'll be sending in. Most of these cards were just binder cards. This is part of my my Shadowless binder. So these cards have really, really gone up in value, which is part of why I'm considering sending it in. You can see that type of damage, pretty significant, probably 6 to 7. I think there's one other issue on the front, if I remember correctly, on this card. There was some sort of chip somewhere. Right here. Right there. And so that's a scratch, and scratched through, and there's another scratch right there. I think that's on the case. But there is a scratch there and a scratch there. And so this, I would say, is I've seen cards like this honestly pull 8s before, but I would guess probably like 7, maybe 6. And with that front scratch, could easily be a 6. It's very hard to predict, I find, some of these. And really, all you can do is kind of send it in and hope for the best. Because the centering is so nice, because the hollow is so nice and clean, there is hope for the card, even though it has that damage. It's always interesting to see what they decide to do. Here's one of the CD promo cards, a Charizard. Fantastic art. Probably will. This was one of my binder collection ones, but the prices on these have gone up now that it makes sense to send in 9s, not just 10s. And that one's a 9 because there's a little bit of an issue. These looked like gem and 10s to me when I looked at them, so I'm be sending these 2 in. These were 2 cards that Rafi and I pulled. Might be sending this in, might not. I do think it's cool, so I might send it in for myself. I would not recommend sending this in right now. There's just like no rush at all if you're unless you're looking to flip it. Like if you're thinking I'm gonna send this in and it's gonna go up in value over time, there's just no reason to send it in. I would wait a long time before sending in a card like that, because you can just keep it in gem and condition and see it, see how many people grade them, see if they do sell, see what the interest is like, that sort of thing. I am going to send in at least one of these. I think one was slightly better centering. I only want to send it in if it's definitely going to get a 10. I just think the art on this is absolutely incredible, but there are going to be quite a few of these out there. Another one of the cards that I pulled in one of the videos, probably will be sending in this guy. This guy definitely looked like a 10. I would only send in these cards if they were 100% bulletproof 10s, guys. And I know other people will say different things, but I'm always going to be on the cautious side. It's very expensive to send these cards in for grading, and with that capital, you could be putting them into new cards. You could be saving up for deals. You can, there's so much you can do in this hobby. If you save up $400 or $500, you can turn that into thousands and thousands of dollars in a short time if you really know what you're doing. And you can even do that in periods that aren't this hot. I'm going to send this guy in. Top 232. I have a few of them going in. There was one little nick there, so I was expecting a 9. Possible 8 on this because of centering on the back and a slight thick edge here. Hoping for a 9 on this guy. Just some random. I sent in a bunch of play promos recently, and these are great cards. Always good, I think, to send in when they're 10s, and this looked like for sure a 9, maybe slightly off center, but I think within the parameters there, and definitely perfect back, no scratches or anything like that. Okay. Now we get into some Yu-Gi-Oh cards, so I'm going to be sending in some of these cards. These were the best ones I could find in my lot, but again, slightly off center, probably a 9. Little bits of front whitening. Pretty good, though. Probably a 9, because again, slightly off center. These are like impossible, guys, to get in 10s. I've looked at thousands of these cards, and I talked to this guy who Tsunagu, who grades a lot of these and has looked at a lot of them, and he says like less than 8% fresh out of pack or 10s because of scratching and very serious like centering issues and all sorts of things. So love this card. It has like that damage, although I've seen cards with this type of front damage get 9s. I think that because there's also off centering on this, back looks pretty nice, but the centering again is off. I would be looking more probably at a 7 on this guy, maybe 8. I might send it in, I might not. The hollow did look really nice, and that's one of the hardest things to find. I think there was one print line. Maybe I can catch it for you guys here. Yeah, you can see it right here going down, and that is extremely common for these as well. Very underrated cards in the world, like, if you're interested in Yu-Gi-Oh, in my opinion. These were the first Yu-Gi-Oh cards, the 1998 Bandai. Again, really great, really cool art. just love this card. Love the hollow pattern. This is a little bit of a stronger card. Praying for a 10, expecting maybe a 9, but who knows, could get an 8. Now, this is probably the nicest one I'm sending in. This card looks like a definite potential 10. I didn't see anything wrong with it. The centering even looks good. Now, the English one, for whatever reason, tended to be a lot easier to grade. So there are more of these English ones, and they're a little bit not as... it's the one English card that was given out with this. They tend not to be as highly coveted, but, I mean, this card is definitely... In a 10, I would imagine this card's easily going for over $1,000. At this point, the Japanese one certainly is going for well over $1,000. Or at least, you know, 600 to 1,000. But they rarely, if ever, come up. Another one I might send in, again, probable 9. I might end up not sending in any of the 9s. It was frustrating because I bought what looked like a pretty good lot that had a lot of them in them, and like they're basically all 8s and 7s, and so I have a lot of completed awesome sets, and I love putting those in binders, but I was hoping that there'd be a few gems in it, and there just weren't. Might be grading this guy, another card that I pulled. I think that there was something wrong with this one then. I was thinking this one probably would get a 9. Yeah, there was a little white dot, 2 white dots, if you can see them really small. So, might not put it in because I do not grade these cards unless they're 10s. Although I think at a 9 value, if you send it in bulk, you're probably safe in the long run. Obviously, in this market, people are probably selling the 9s for like $50 and you'd make money, which is just silly to buy that card, $50. Oh, this one's off-center. I remember this being better. Might not send it in. I think otherwise this was perfect, though. Probable 9. Such amazing art, these CD promos. These cards would be worth so much more if they weren't so common. You know, they have the old back. Such incredible art. Probably will send it in at the 9. Then I have a few of these that I think are going to be 10s. I'm actually trying to complete PSA 10 versions of all of these hollows from each of these sets. You know, like Sandstorm here, from each of these sets, and the Nintendo EX. I have a lot of these in PSA 10, and I think that they're just awesome old school arts. I do think that they will retain value over time. I think that they're quite hard to find, and when you get them, lots of them in PSA 10s, and when you complete sets, I think that there's good value there. You know, I was buying these cards for like 25-50 cents, and these I've managed to get maybe 100 of them in PSA 10 now from these sets, and I think that this will. These are a few that I didn't grade because they were just slightly, like, I only send them in usually when they're like I'm 100% sure they'll be 10s, which you can be on some of those Japanese cards because they're so nice, but the printings were so good. But I do think they'll be 10s, so I probably will send them in. Okay, so here's more of the cards. It wasn't just the Pichu. So these all look like 10s. I won't go through them, but from that same lot that I bought, got an amazing deal. So these are all 10s. You know, this is going for over $100 in 10. A few more of these. Another, you know, really great card. The centering was maybe just the slightest bit off left to right, but I think it's still within the parameters. Love the art on this card. I do think it's probably a 10, but could be a 9. And then for a few more of these guys, these were all just more of these Japanese cards that I think are all going to be 10s from, these are actually from the, not the Nintendo EX. I'm also collecting the ones from these areas as long as I get them in 10s and I only pay like $8, $9 total, including grading. I think I'm safe in terms of them holding value in the long term. Let's see what else. I do have some more cards somewhere I was going to send in. Looks like I didn't put them in that pile, but... And then the opening we were doing the other day to finish everything off, I might send in this Goku card. It's 1 in 12 to pull one of these cards, and there are 4 of them in the pack. So there are 4 of them in the set, and so you get 2 per box. So it is pretty difficult to pull it. I did end up opening up more packs off camera. Unfortunately, the best Goku we got, which was this, and we can see the centering's pretty far off here. So not going to be a 10 for sure. The rest of this card was good. I would hope for a 9, but you got to expect an 8 with that bad of centering. The rest of these cards were the cards that actually looked pretty good. I think this was, oh no, I wasn't going to send in that other Bulma, but this one I was going to send in. You can see the centering's flawless on this one. And the backs were pretty good. Certainly 9s, possible 10s. These are like harder to get 10s on than like any Pokemon cards, I swear. Just the amount of surface area that can scratch and the extreme centering issues, and the back always has that like this damage on the top that brings it down to a 9. So I've looked over my 9s, and this type of damage they give 9s on. They don't take it down lower. So I'm willing to send in anything that I think is a 9. This one I'm hoping is a 10, which would be huge. This would be, I think, actually a very expensive card for those who want these. They're extremely hard to find. I'm not sure there's a single 10 in the world. Now, the issue with this is that that stuff at the top that's at the top of like every card. It'll probably hold it back from a 10, unfortunately. But I did see a 10 not Vegeta, and it had that. It has a little bit of that whitening, so they do let it go through with just a tiny bit if the rest of the card is perfect, and this card is as good as it gets. I looked at it very carefully, and this one I think was the better of the two Friezas with the centering, maybe. Oh no, this one was the worst one. It's a little bit thinner at the top than the bottom, but I think the back is similar. You know, same type of edge around the top and good on the bottom. Might send this one in, might not. These were the ones. So I opened all 24, and these were all the ones that I thought had chances of 9. You know, everything else, and this one too, and everything else from the packs were like 8s, 7s. I got some like 5s. I had some cards that like blatantly were like bent and or had like extreme issues with like scratching out of the 24. So again, if you like these, the chase is there. They're fun. And I definitely will be. I'm almost done with my complete 9 set that I showed in my last video, and so once I send these in, hopefully I will complete that 9 set if the Goku goes through. So hopefully that was helpful to talk a little bit about what to look for in grading, what I am grading right now, the different things I'm looking at. I'm also probably going to be sending in some Harry Potter and Middle-earth cards potentially. As well, and I can show you guys those too if you're interested at some point. Let's see if there's anything else I want to leave you guys with today. Yeah, I guess the and I've said this in this video, but what I would preach is patience, and I would preach two modes. Either get very aggressive and flip as much as you can and sell as much as you can into this market, or be very patient and don't rush to grade everything. I would wait to see what these pop reports look like in a few years even. I think that there's a real lack of patience in this hobby, and there's a real lack of long-term, sort of long-term approach to this hobby right now. That I'm seeing from a number of people, and certainly from a number of channels, the way they talk about these cards. This hobby is going to be around for a very long time. There are going to be people in this hobby that are going to be around. You know, they're often on or consistently through their whole lives and are going to be enjoying it. So I would either, make money in the short term and sell what's hot and grade express and continue to flip and grow your money. Absolutely do the grind. That's what I did that's a lot of what I did to build the collection that I have today, and to build the capital that I needed to buy the things so that I can continue to grow my collection in a smart way. But for those of you who are not thinking of selling your cards, I would say patience above all. See where the prices end up. See if you really want these cards graded for your own collection or not, because you may lose money on a lot of it in grading fees when you look back in 10 to 20 years from now, and you could have actually used that capital, that money, to buy cards right now that did retain their value or did go up because they were more vintage, they were actually rare, that sort of thing. All right, guys, so thank you so much for tuning in. And I will talk to you all soon. I'll do another video for you all soon. One final thought I do have is I think people get into the trap of chasing money, chasing bad money, throwing good money after bad. And so I think that can happen with Modern, where you open Modern product and then the cards you open are really off-centered. They're really not worth grading. You didn't get that good at chase cards, but you're frustrated that you lost money on the cards. And so in order to try to recoup it, you kind of trick yourself into thinking that if I grade them, it's going to really increase their value. And that's often not the case. And it might be the case for certain things in the short run right now because there is a lot of intensity on these cards, but I really don't think it'll work in the long run. And what you're doing is you're actually just spending more money. You're wasting more money. You're throwing more money down the drain if your goal is to make money and or grow the biggest collection that you possibly can. Now, at the end of the day, it's if you want to grade these cards or anything in your collection just for pure enjoyment and you understand the financial risks and you make that decision anyway, that sounds very smart and well thought through. But I think people falling for a lot of this idea that they're trying to bail themselves out by grading, and grading is very expensive. And I think that there's a mania in grading right now too. And people are grading lots of things that they don't really like that much, and they're doing it just for profit. And I think that that's a big mistake. And there's certainly a mania in grading on Modern right now. And these cards are all gem mint condition. Many people, tens of thousands of people, are going to have all of these cards sitting in binders in gem mint condition. So if for some reason somehow the prices do maintain themselves or go up over time, you're just going to see more and more people grade them over time and sell them slowly. So there's also a lot of smart people who are hoarding them and aren't grading them all and are going to slowly grade them and slowly try to sell them into the market and these sorts of things with a lot of the Modern to give the appearance of rarity when in fact there's 100,000 of some shiny hyper modern card in the world that could grade a PSA 10 that is a PSA 10 quality fresh out of pack. So just be careful with all that stuff. And even with vintage, as I'm going to continue to show in more of these videos, I have already graded tons of it, and I still have a lot of product, mint first edition product that's going to be grading, at least 9s, if not 10s. And I am by no means the biggest. I do by no means have the biggest or even one of the biggest, I think, ungraded raw collections out there. So do not listen to people who tell you that these cards are not out there and that many people don't have them, because they do. Okay, guys? All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. Happy collecting, and hope this was useful for you all. All right. Thanks again.